This past Saturday night, I was like many of you, home, bored, and in need of some football. So I turned on my laptop and fired up a classic game, 2011 Champions League final, Manchester United against Barcelona at the new Wembley.
Well, you could, in simple terms, pitch this as the greatest manager in the world against the greatest team in the world.
Superstars and football legends dotted the team sheet. Sir Alex Ferguson on one side, Pep Guardiola on the other, Lionel Messi and Rio Ferdinand, Xavi and Wayne Rooney. But other less celebrated players started as well. Fabio, Chicharito, and Ji-sung Park.
Fabio for O'Shea, Valencia for Anderson, Hernandez for Ronaldo. They're the three alterations from 2009.
As the commentators ran through the team sheet, I wondered what happened to some of these players. Where in the world were the likes of Fabio and Ji-sung Park now? So I did what most people would do. I typed their names on Google. And as you might imagine, the first result on Google was Wikipedia. Wikipedia is the world's largest online encyclopedia, hosting more than 50 million articles in 300 languages. And as you probably also know, those millions of entries are written entirely by volunteers. So who are these anonymous writers who have such a profound influence on our game and our consumption of the game? Today's episode is part one of a two-part series we're doing on the people who contribute to Wikipedia's football pages. I hope you enjoy.
My name's Jonny Sharples, and according to the BBC, I am an online joker. I will get lost in rabbit holes of like the most niche topics on Wikipedia. Like I'll be scanning through under 20, under 18 World Cup squads to find out like the mixture of, you've obviously got people that go on to become superstars that are in some of these squads, and then you get players that never amount to very much, and then I'll find myself reading their Wikipedia pages and finding out what happened to them, and it's like before you know it, that's 2 hours in an evening lost when you're trying to watch a film or you're trying to watch like a box set or something, and you've missed the whole narrative of the whole film because you were reading about someone that happened to have been like Cristiano Ronaldo's teammate for a Portuguese team that went to the under-17s World Cup, and the best he ever did was play for some 4th or 5th division team in Portugal. So I just find myself getting lost down, or like who wore certain shirt numbers at World Cups and things like that. And I think Wikipedia is so good for that sort of thing. I remember when I was at university and Wikipedia was one of the resources that we were told that we could never use because it was unreliable. But if you try and change anything on Wikipedia, that gets changed back within about 5 minutes with like 50 citations. So I think it certainly used to have a harsh reputation, but like you say, it's so good now, and I just find myself getting lost in it. But I also have that horrible habit of being the one that changes everything on the page because it's funny.
I remember as well teachers telling us you can't use Wikipedia, but it was always a good starting off point. You mentioned that you'll make an edit and then someone will edit it back in minutes.
Yeah.
So it's really that fast.
Especially if it's a really obvious change. Like when I changed Jermaine Easter's Wikipedia page to change his surname from Easter to non-denominational spring celebration, every reference to that, because that's so obvious and such a clear piece of vandalism, and you just have to do a find and replace for that to revert it back to Easter. I think that's one of those really easy things to do. Quite who's got notifications on for when someone changes Jermaine Easter's Wikipedia page to change it back that quickly begs belief. But yeah, they're rapid. Some stuff, obviously, for pages not that popular, I imagine it doesn't get changed quite as quickly, but yeah, it can be rapid sometimes. I think the more obvious of a piece of vandalism is, the quicker it will get reverted back.
Do you think that some guy in some random place in Scotland maybe, or in the United States somewhere, that just gets a notification, James Easter's Wikipedia page has been changed, I got to get on that right now, code alert, code blue?
Yeah, obviously people can have notifications set up. People are a lot more computer literate than I could ever dream of being. So I don't know. There's people that are obviously very dedicated to keeping Wikipedia correct and up to date, but people rely on it a lot more, like certainly journalists, like you say, it's a starting point for a lot of people. So they want it to be as correct as possible. And when some idiot from the northwest of England comes and changes it for a joke so he can screen print it and put it onto Twitter, that probably gets their goat a little bit and they want to change it back as fast as possible. But I know there's probably certainly dedicated groups of people that want to keep it as clean and correct as possible. So it wouldn't surprise me in the politest way possible if there were people out there that had notifications set, not specifically to Jermaine Easter or other second and third tier footballers from England, but probably just as a general pointer that they have some sort of alert for when something is obviously vandalized.
You said that you go down these rabbit holes for hours at a time. How long have you been using Wikipedia kind of this way and having this like weird obsession?
It's probably impossible to put a time span on it. Like I said, Wikipedia's been around for years and years. It was around when I was at university, probably quite a long time before then, where it was cited as an unreliable source. But I think just football trivia, like pub quiz questions, things like that, send you down these rabbit holes, especially with the invention of social media and time wasting, procrastination, things like that. And there's so many people putting quizzes out, and that's obviously a good way of getting people to your website and things like that. And you just, you want to know these little facets of information that perhaps other people don't, and you can be the pub bore that wants to impress people with your niche knowledge of football. And that's certainly probably where I would stand in that respect. And so I'd say like the past X amount of years, especially when you want to, with Twitter and things like that, you want to be the one that has the niche statistic, or you want to have the reference that other people will nod to, and you want to get it. I'm a bit of a perfectionist when it comes to things on Twitter, and sometimes I'm human, I get things wrong, but the best way to do that is to check Wikipedia sort of religiously to get the right accents on certain letters of players' names or team names. Wikipedia is the best place to go and do that and get everything right. So yeah, getting lost in rabbit holes and things like that has been probably, what year are we in now? 2020, probably about 10 years or so, if not more, of just like reading about these footballers that you've long forgotten about from the 90s and early 2000s, and what sort of teammates they had, what shirt numbers they wore, what teams they played for after they sort of left the public eye, certainly in respect of some of those players from the 90s and early 2000s. So yeah, it's just so easy for me, and I imagine a lot of people like me, to get lost in those sort of searches. And especially with Wikipedia, it makes it so easy for you to, everything's hyperlinked to another page. It's so easy for you to just click another page, click another page, click another page, and just end up reading about the most niche and almost forgotten footballers that had just been cast to the back of your mind.
It sounds like one of the really cool things that you get out of it is that it brings old memories to life, and it brings players that you used to have affection for, a connection with, to life, and keeps them kind of in your memory and, a part of your life almost.
Yeah, sort of. I have a big love of a Sky Sports TV programme called Premiership Years, Premier League Years, where they go season by season, starting obviously in 1992 all the way through to last season. They'll produce one every year where they go through the goals, the games of each year. I know I'll be watching that during the day and see something like, say, from like 95, 96 or 96, 97. And there's a player that you'd almost forgotten about, say someone like, I don't know, Egil Ostenstad, who played for Southampton and Blackburn and a couple of others.
Southampton are going forwards looking for a consolation. Oh, they've got one. Egil Ostenstad.
You'll see him score a goal and go, I remember he must have scored like 20, 25 goals a season for a couple of years. And then you go and check his Wikipedia page and maybe he scraped about 10 or 12 a season. And so it's like, in my childhood memory, he must have been a lot better than he was, and what became of him. So you'll read about what clubs he went on to join, for instance, and then sort of what World Cup squads he was part of, what awards he won. And then you'll remember, he was teammates with X player. So you'll start reading his Wikipedia page, and before you know it, you're down one of those rabbit holes again, and you've missed about 3 seasons of Premier League years on the telly in the background while you've been just scrolling through your phone looking at all these players. So yeah, it is just sort of having those affection for those players when you were younger, and seeing sort of what became of them and what they're up to now in a lot of instances. Philippe Albert, who's one of my absolute favourite footballers of all time, he was a defender for Newcastle in the mid to late 90s, played for Belgium as well.
Here they are, looking
for number 5. With Philippe Albert. Oh! Absolutely glorious!
And it's like checking his Wikipedia page, seeing what he's up to. And he left Newcastle, joined Fulham, joined a team in Belgium. And after he retired, he became a fruit and vegetable salesman. And probably without Wikipedia, you might never know that unless, you know, he did an interview in like 442 or The Guardian or something where it gets mentioned. So it's just interesting to see those like niche things that footballers did after they retired and what they're up to these days as well.
It feels like it really kind of connects all the different niches and players and teams in world football. Like, you know, one player might connect you from Brazil to Japan, and that person might connect you to something happening in Greece. And so it really links kind of everything that's going around in the past and present in world football.
Yeah, it's like the whole 6 degrees of separation kind of thing that, you know, how quickly can you link, say, I don't know, someone that played for Newcastle in the 90s to Lionel Messi with a few clicks of a button on each of those Wikipedia pages. So it's interesting to see just how interconnected the world of football is and the world in general is, and Wikipedia really allows you to sort of make those connections really quickly, really swiftly, and really sort of just brings it all around of how small the world really is, especially the world of football.
I want to kind of take it back to using Wikipedia for jokes. Can you walk us through the process of how you make a joke with Wikipedia, you know, kind of from the beginning to the end?
There's loads of different things. For instance, I think the first Wikipedia page I can really remember sort of heavily editing for a joke, in inverted commas, because it's not really a joke in the sense that it's not funny, is a footballer called Wesley Ngo Baheng, who was a reserve player at Newcastle, and he, on an old copy of Football Manager, it was Football Manager 2010, I took over Gateshead, who were a non-league team based just outside Newcastle. I needed a player, I needed a striker that was good enough, so I signed Wesley Ngo Baheng on loan from Newcastle, and he scored a lot of goals for us. We were a non-league team. We got promoted into League Two. Then I signed him full-time on a free transfer, and he scored quite a lot of goals for us, scored in every division as we got promoted to the Premier League. And so I thought, well, you know, I'll just edit his Wikipedia page. He hadn't really played for Newcastle. I think he'd had a couple of loan moves to places like Hereford. And so I thought, I'll just edit his whole Wikipedia page to reflect how his career was on Football Manager. And so I did that and put in loads of detail, made it look as real as possible. And then it got, like you say, it got edited quite quickly, but I saved a copy. I'm not an idiot. I spent a long time on this. I saved a copy of it and just kept editing it back, and it just kept getting spat back at me as, you know, incorrect information based in the future, because, you know, by the time Gateshead got into the Premier League, it was like 2016, and I was editing this in 2010. So suspicions were raised, I think, in that instance. So I did that, and I did that with another footballer who isn't even real, called Ivica Strock, and I made a Wikipedia page for him detailing his exploits at Celtic and how he scored over 800 goals, won the Champions League countless number of times, was a runner-up in the Ballon d'Or and things like that. And again, that just kept getting edited, saying this isn't a real player, all this takes place in the future. And it got to the point where I kept reverting it back, where they banned anybody from making a Wikipedia page about anybody called Ivica Strock. So they got really angry in that regard. But other instances, like the Jermaine Easter thing all came about because a lot of people get quite upset around Easter in the UK that certain, like, Easter eggs don't say Easter eggs on them anymore. They say, like, you know, chocolate eggs, and people get really wound up that they think this is like political correctness gone mad and we're not allowed to celebrate, you know, Christian festivals anymore, blah, blah, blah. So I thought it'd be funny to, you know, where does the word Easter crop up quite a lot? On the footballer Jermaine Easter's Wikipedia page. So I just edited every instance. One year I did it just where I removed the word Easter completely, so it would say Jermaine blank space and then that. And then the next year I thought I'll change it to like non-denominational spring celebration, and then did the whole thing again. So that sort of, you know, it's combining. One of my favourite things to do with jokes on Twitter is to combine football with another newsworthy event. And so that was really a good combination of that. And then the other instances is where you just make up ludicrous things about people's careers and see if you can get away with how long it can be left on their Wikipedia page, whether it gets cited in other articles where people have obviously just used Wikipedia to make their research for their article. So just slip in little things that, you know, would definitely make the cut in an article. So I edited Jack Anick, who was a Newcastle reserve goalkeeper's Wikipedia page, because Newcastle had an injury crisis a few years ago, probably about around 2012, where I think it was Steve Harper and Tim Krull both got quite bad injuries, so we had to rely on Jack Hannock. And at that time, I don't think he had a Wikipedia page. So I created one, just added a little bits, and then tried to put a few nuggets of false information in there. And I don't think they got picked up, so I started adding more fake bits of information and it got to the point where his entire Wikipedia page was just completely falsified, but in the most ludicrous sense possible. So it lost all possibility of it ever being cited in an actual news article.
Such as what? Can you give an example?
I think it basically told the story of X-Men, but with Jack Hannock as one of the mutants or something. And it just got to that point where I just kept editing it and editing it. And there was no hope of it ever getting into a Guardian article or getting mentioned on a football podcast or anything as a genuine fact. But yeah, things like that. And I think away from actually editing Wikipedia on Twitter, lots of people are in the same boat as myself and yourself, that they will read Wikipedia for football information and they'll know exactly how Wikipedia structures footballer articles about footballers in terms of how they'll list their career, how they will introduce them at the beginning of an article in terms of, how their name's pronounced, what year they were born, what position they play. And so you can make jokes on Twitter without having to edit Wikipedia in the same formatting that Wikipedia would use. So when in the UK, a new political party came about called Change UK, and a lot of Labour MPs defected from Labour to Change UK, and then a few of them then defected from Change UK over to the Liberal Democrats. And so I did a tweet where it was basically done like a footballer's career page would be on Wikipedia, where it said that there was a loan move to Change UK in the middle of a full-time move. And it had the arrow that loan moves have on Wikipedia to show that that was a loan. And then my whole bio on Twitter is basically based around what my Wikipedia page will look like. So it has the citations, it has the way that my name will be pronounced using the phonetics and things like that. So yeah, I think Wikipedia is so engulfing in a sense, and it has its own specific language and formatting and things like that, that it's really easy to make recognizable references and jokes to it in other mediums such as Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, what have you, in articles and things like that. And it's really interesting to see how such a almost dry website as Wikipedia, and it is very, fact-based and everything has to be cited and have proper references, can lend itself so well to making, quite simple jokes as well.
I get the impression that you kind of like the back and forth that you have with these anonymous Wikipedia editors.
To a point, I do feel like these are people that are giving their time to improve user experience, and people want to go on Wikipedia to find factual information, and they're, see it as their role and their job to make that as easy as possible for people. And they just want, they don't want some idiot trying to ruin their perfectly presented Wikipedia page with nuggets of false information. So there is a point where, you would feel bad that you're making this person's almost volunteering role a lot harder. But it's just, especially because people can put notes of why they've changed it back, and like obvious vandalism, I think, is the standardized one. But sometimes people do get quite irate in what they're saying, and it's just a little bit of a prank sometimes. But yeah, the back and forth is quite funny, I won't lie, but I do feel a bit sorry for these people sometimes that, I'm just, or the people that are making these edits are just ruining their hard work.
You said that, sometimes they have some comments that are pretty irate. Can you give me an example of one of those?
My favorite one was this is based on false information that takes place in the future around Wesleyan Gobaheng and Avicii Strock's Wikipedia pages. And yeah, the false information based in the future is what really sticks in my head. I was really lucky enough to take part in a documentary about Football Manager, the computer game, a few years ago, about my experiences with Wesleyan Gobaheng's career at Gateshead and so on and so forth, and got to go back and look at the old Wikipedia page and relive the back and forth there and seeing the false information based in the future. I think as soon as you see that he scored X amount of goals in the Premier League for Gateshead in 2015 and you're sat there in 2011, it does become quite obvious, and you are wondering what on earth is this person doing and why they edited a whole Wikipedia page just to do that. But, it was an afternoon. I enjoyed myself, and hopefully it was easy enough for them to revert it all back.
You said before that newspapers and news organizations will look at Wikipedia and possibly cite some information from there. Have any of your jokes ever been actually cited in The Guardian, for example, or a news organization like that?
Not cited in a serious sense. When I edited Jermaine Easter's Wikipedia page to say non-denominational spring celebration, a couple of in the politest sense, lower end tabloid newspapers picked up on it and did a news article around it just to say that a prankster, as I've been called a few times by various news organizations, Twitter or Wikipedia user has edited this. Unfortunately, nothing has managed to slip through the net in a serious citation as yet, but it gives me something to aim for, I suppose. See what the most ludicrous thing I can get into a newspaper or a serious news website is.
Why do you want one of your things on Wikipedia to get into The Guardian? Because, technically you are misinforming people.
Just be funny, I suppose, is the more ludicrous it would be and the more unbelievable it would be, the better. I think I'd never want to purposefully mislead in the sense that it's a believable thing that would have a long-lasting and, worldwide negative impact. If it was just a silly little thing, it'd just tickle me a little bit, and probably I would say screenshot it and put it on Twitter and allow the news organisation to make a quick amendment. But I suppose it's the whole thing around pranks as a whole and just silly jokes. Why do we do any of that? Getting into existential things now. Why do we do anything? But yeah, it just tickled me for a little bit. But yeah, I never want to purposefully deceive people to the point of being told that I was fake news and things like that.
It's not just you that does this. Do you know anyone else that does this sort of thing? Or have you ever interacted with people, maybe even just online, who have done similar things to you?
Especially around Football Manager and the Football Manager community, I know people are always very keen to create Wikipedia pages for their own computer-generated players. I think the best place to do it, I have found now in that regard, is the Wikipedia sandbox page. You can edit to your own ends in there, and you can then just screenshot it and present it as if it was an actual Wikipedia page. I don't know if it's specifically Wikipedia, but I know a Twitter user whose username is Wayer's Cousin. He did some stuff around Lincoln Red Imps, who are a Gibraltar football team that played Celtic a few years ago in a Champions League qualifier, and his citations were quoted on Sky Sports News.
Andy, I want to put this in perspective before we start. Apparently, Celtic's opponents play on average to a crowd around 28, and they don't have access to their pitch on Tuesdays because it's used by the local Metal Detecting Society. That said, is this Celtic's worst ever result?
I do remember that. Yes. I remember reading that. Yeah.
As I think that the footballers at Lincoln Red Imps had day jobs such as labourers and things like that, and it wasn't specifically true. Yeah, so I think there are people out there that like to do the little pranks and to, pull the rug from underneath people's feet occasionally. So, no, I've never specifically asked anyone, but I've seen, being in Facebook groups with other Football Manager players, seeing things on Twitter and in forums and things like that. There are people out there that do like to edit Wikipedia with their own achievements in computer games. I suppose it may well be the same for people that play a lot of career mode and things on FIFA and stuff like that they like to have their achievements set in stone on Wikipedia and create their own not fake profiles, but create their own pages for their regens and new gen players and things like that. So I wouldn't say there's a specific network of people like me out there that are all in cahoots with each other, but I know there are certainly people that like to do the same sort of thing.
Can you imagine a world without Wikipedia?
I'd have to read stuff like books to find out information, and I can't be reading books. It's 2020. I've got other stuff on. No, I think without a resource like Wikipedia, I think it feels strange to say, especially when, like I say, I was at university and we were told that we couldn't use Wikipedia as a resource. I think we'd be a lot less well informed without something like Wikipedia. I think it gives you enough sort of baseline information on a variety of topics that you can hold conversations and you can, come across as enough of an expert on something to get through small talk and things like that. And, it is a reliable resource nowadays, especially with the number of citations and references that you need. If it wasn't there, I think we would need something like it. And I'm sure someone would invent something like it. We used to have Encarta, and Wikipedia is way up beyond Encarta 95 and things like that. So if it wasn't there, I think someone would create it.
Jonny Sharples is a humorist, and you can follow all of his musings on Twitter at Johnny Gabriel. This is part 1 of a 2-part series on Wikipedia and football, and the second episode will be coming out on Friday, and that is with a man who is responsible for a good portion of the Japanese football scene on Wikipedia. This episode was produced by John McKenzie and Hugo Chambray. I'm Josh Schneider-Weiler, and thanks for listening. And before you go, if you enjoy the show, please share it with a friend or leave a review on iTunes. Until next time, please be safe.